Alright, welcome to the beginning of my Shadow of the Erdtree walkthrough. If you're coming from my base game walkthrough, then you already know the drill, but if not, this will be a 100% walkthrough showing you how to do everything the DLC has to offer, every boss, every location, every questline, and once again, just about every item short of picking a few flowers here and there. To actually access the DLC, the only requirements, aside from your mom's credit card, are defeating Radon and Moog, and the access point is right here in Moog's arena. If you have no idea where I am right now or what I just said, then you're in luck because I made another quick video which shows you how to get here, even if you're on a brand new character. Now before we start, since I personally have a few friends that have only gotten into Elden Ring just now with the release of this DLC, I'm sure there are plenty of other people that are in the same boat and are pretty new, and I wanted to address a couple things, so bear with me, I'm going to talk for a bit here before we actually jump into it, but there are timestamps to skip ahead if you want. The first thing I wanted to talk about is the difficulty of the DLC. Shadow of the Erdtree is a challenge, as I'm sure you've probably heard by now, and I can confidently say that it is absolutely designed with the assumption that you will be playing through it with an endgame character. What do I mean by endgame? Frankly, that is up to interpretation, but for the average player, I would say that means you should definitely have at least a max level weapon, and I would recommend a minimum level of about 150 for your character. I'm basing that number off of roughly where I tend to be when I finish Elden Ring if I did more or less everything in the base game and no additional rune farming on the side. Most builds you'll find floating around the internet that are geared toward endgame or going into New Game Plus are going to be around level 150 at least, if not higher. So I think that's a good benchmark goal if you have no idea what level you should be before you start it. That being said, I'm going to be going in closer to level 200 myself, and the sky is the limit here because the DLC has its own self-contained damage scaling mechanic that will significantly affect the strength of your character within the DLC zones, much more so than your character's actual level, I think. It has no influence outside the DLC. It's pretty hard, in my opinion, to actually feel over-leveled in Shadow of the Erdtree just based off of your character's level alone. Tons of people have gone in at level 300 plus, and honestly nobody has complained about it being too easy. So I would say just get to whatever level you need to be to effectively use the weapons, spells, and armor that you want to use. Leave some levels left over to have a comfortable amount of health, FP, and stamina, and you'll be good to go. Anyway, more about that new damage scaling mechanic. We're going to be collecting these things called Scadutree fragments. I tend to just call them Scadutree fragments anyway, but I'm pretty sure the Scadu part is legitimately pronounced closer to Shadow, which translates to shadow, and obviously there's a shadow tree in this DLC that's pretty prominent, so yeah, just gonna say shadow tree because it's easier and probably also just correct. But if you want to keep saying skidoo, that's cool with me. It is fun to say. These are implemented kind of like golden seeds in the base game, where you would trade one golden seed to get an extra flask, and then after a few times doing that, you would start needing 2 golden seeds to get an additional flask, then 3 seeds for another flask, and so on. Same exact idea here. In this case, however, you'll trade a Scadutree fragment in exchange for increasing the level of your Scadutree blessing. You start at level 0, where your stats will be exactly what they would be in the base game, so there's no debuff for not having any of these. It is explicitly a buff, and if you collect all 50 Scadutree fragments, you'll be at blessing level 20. I'm slightly hesitant to include exact numbers here since they've already been adjusted before, but I kind of doubt they'll change it again, and the adjustment was more shifting the progression curve than it was overhauling the whole system. So even if it does change again, it probably won't be drastic. But anyway, here's what it looked like as of patch 1.12.3. As you can see, the Scadutree blessing works as a multiplier for your damage dealt and the damage you receive. If you choose not to increase your Scadutree blessing level, then you'll just deal the same amount of damage you deal in the base game and receive the same amount of damage as well. So even if after everything I've already said, you're still worried about being overleveled for the DLC, don't be. Not only can you simply just choose not to turn in your fragments if you really don't want the damage multipliers, but the fact that you can get up to 2 times your normal damage dealt, take half as much damage from enemies, and people are still saying that the DLC is too hard, should put your mind at ease that you will not feel overleveled. One thing I want to point out here is that there is a soft cap at level 12. You'll notice that your damage goes up by like 5 to 10% every level until 12, after which you're looking at 2 to 3% increases. Unfortunately, unlike the golden seeds in the base game, there are no spare excess Scadutree fragments. You need 50 to max out your blessing, and there are only 50 in the game, which is a huge pain, honestly. But thankfully, the patch that they last adjusted these values made it so they don't scale linearly. As you can see here, you would originally get 5% extra damage every single level, which meant that every level was equally important, and missing any of the fragments was even more frustrating and punishing. Now though, the last few levels just don't give you as much, so for instance, if you were missing quite a few of them, like let's say you missed 15 fragments in your playthrough, and you would be stuck at level 15 coincidentally, you would only be missing out on like 13% more damage, which is still annoying, but easier to live with than missing out on 25% more damage, which would have been the case with the original system. So you really don't get punished too much if you somehow miss the last few fragments. Now there's another system that works the exact same way for making your spirit ashes stronger. We'll also be collecting an item called Revered Spirit Ash, which you can exchange for 10 levels worth of increased damage dealt and reduced damage taken for your spirit ashes. Which leads me to my next point. Summoning. The big bad word in the Elden Ring community, the cardinal sin. I went off on a whole rant at the beginning of my original walkthrough about just playing the game the way you want to play it, doing whatever is the most fun for you, and ignoring what the weird elitist crybabies have to say about it. And I have to admit, my feelings have changed a bit since then. That is to say that I feel even more strongly that you should do whatever makes the game more enjoyable. I'm going to be honest, if the developers didn't explicitly want you to use summons in this DLC or viewed them as just a crutch, then I can promise you they wouldn't have included an entirely new system specifically designed to make summons even stronger. They're part of the game, which means you plus summons is basically the base difficulty of the game. By not using them, you're going out of your way to add extra challenge, and that's totally fine, but so is just playing the game the way that it was designed. There are tons of cool new spirit ashes in the DLC as well. Use them, have fun. Life sucks, but Elden Ring doesn't have to. And lastly, just to explain my inevitable hypocrisy on the matter, I'm probably not going to do much summoning because I'm making a walkthrough, and having another target in the arena makes bosses behave much less predictably, which makes it harder for me to show off what their attacks look like. That being said, as you might be able to tell by looking at my character if you watched my base game walkthrough, I will be expanding my build beyond just the plain old Uchi Katana I used for the entirety of the base game walkthrough, because by this point in the game you have all the toys in the game to play with, so there's no excuse for not using them. I just ran through the whole game with a basic sword in case anyone else was doing the same thing, and to make sure it didn't feel like I was only killing bosses because I had such a strong build. But by this point, if you've been listening to me at all, you've completed the base game in its entirety at least once, so there's really no reason for not branching out and putting together a halfway decent build. And the DLC is also just tough enough that I don't really need to be nerfing myself so much just to draw out fights for the sake of having more time to talk about them like I did in the base game. One other thing related to following this guide, it is meant to be followed from start to finish. The map is not linear by any means, and when you mix in NPC questlines, there's going to be some running ahead and backtracking here and there. So you'll probably miss something if you skip between episodes too much. The biggest example I can think of is the fact that for the first few zones, I like to run around and cherry pick important items early, namely Scadutree fragments, at least until we get close to that soft cap, before I actually go through and properly clear the zones that they're in. Same goes for NPC interactions. I try to knock those out as early as possible, so if you see me go through an area in a future episode with an NPC and just ignore them without mentioning it, it's probably because I talked to them in a previous episode. Kind of annoying, I know, but it's too easy to lock yourself out of that stuff and miss it, so it's better to do it early. On that same note, if I skip ahead to a later area to talk to an NPC or grab a specific item, I'm going to ignore the rest of the items in the area until I reach that point naturally in the walkthrough later on. That's just so if you click on an episode that says Gravesite Plain, for instance, expecting to see how to get all the stuff in Gravesite Plain, half the zone won't be cleared already because I skipped to it in a previous episode. You're the one playing the game though, so always feel free to explore those areas and loot whatever you want. It's just one of those things I have to do, so the walkthrough is somewhat organized. I know I just said it was meant to be followed from start to finish, so in theory that wouldn't be an issue, but let's be real, not everyone's going to do that, which might screw you over with questlines, but at least this way you can still find all the bosses and items and stuff however you decide to watch these videos. Anyway, let's talk to Needle Knight Letta here to get started, and also make sure to exhaust the dialogue of any NPC you come across, and what I mean by that is keep hitting the talk button until they are repeating the last thing they said. If you don't exhaust all their dialogue, they usually won't move on to their next location, and you won't progress their quest lines. Whenever you're ready, interact with the withered arm to be transported to the Realm of Shadow. And once you're here, we'll just go straight ahead. Up the stairs, and welcome to Gravesite Plain. So, we'll grab this grace here. And if you open your map, you'll see just ahead where we can get the map fragment for this area, so we'll go do that. Real quick though, rest and pass the time tonight. There are 9 larval tiers in the DLC, and they're super easy to spot because they'll be in the middle of a bright glowing ring of gravestones out in the world somewhere. But the catch is that they only appear at night, so I'm gonna have you setting the time to night quite a few times here as we go through these zones. There's a really annoying enemy on top of that archway to our right. Try to avoid him. If he hops down, just ignore him. He's going to be much more trouble than he's worth since we don't have any fragments yet. And I kid you not, that might be the most annoying enemy type in the DLC, even if our damage wasn't an issue. So we get our map there. Gravesite Plain. Cool. Now to start out, I'm going to run around grabbing some graces, talking to NPCs, and picking up easy Scadutree fragments to get a jump on the difficulty spike before we do any serious fighting. There are 10 fragments we can get here in Gravesite Plain before fighting any boss or jumping to any other regions, so there's really no reason not to grab them. They're all super easy to get. One of them I'll save for when we tackle a legacy dungeon in the next episode. But we actually need 11 fragments to get to blessing level 6. So only grabbing 9 fragments won't make a difference right now anyway, because the 10th one won't get us an upgrade. But first, we go through Scorched Ruins here, grab that grace there, and then from the grace, we can head down this path to the east, and there's going to be these guys with like sparkling jars on their head. These work kind of like teardrop scarabs, but they don't stand out nearly as much and don't really make a sound like a teardrop scarab would. But you kill them for some good loot usually. That's going to give us a couple items, including a Scadutree fragment. Grab the black fireflies and then run southeast along this cliff here. And you're going to notice I'm putting a tracker on my screen for important collectibles like Scadutree fragments, but I'm going to put the blessing level that you would be at if you turned all of them in on the screen as well, because once you turn them in, you can't see them in your inventory anymore, so it's kind of hard to keep track of how many you've picked up unless you just make a list on the side for yourself. But this way, if it says on the screen level 7 and you've turned in every fragment you have, but you're not level 7 yet, you'll at least know that you missed one somewhere. Not a perfect solution, I don't think there is one really, but I'm hoping it at least helps a little bit with tracking them. And then yeah, along this cliff here, you'll see this glowing ring of gravestones. They all look like this, and a larval tier, but you will only see that if it is nighttime. So keep going forward. We're back down on this main path here. I said this in like every episode of my original walkthrough. I really will try to use the map more often, but like I'm trying to get through so much content and convey so much information in these episodes, my brain is just like constantly overloaded. So if I don't do it, I'm sorry, but I at least don't cut up these videos at all, so if you watch the whole thing, you can see what I do and where I go, even if it takes a little longer. But grab all those assorted items there. Also, just about everything in the DLC kind of drops like a lot of runes, so I mean, I'm not gonna say I'm gonna go around and kill every last guy, but it's not really a bad idea to do it, honestly. Now, also, I'm not gonna be summoning for bosses for the most part probably, but these open world areas are fair game. These videos are already going to be super long, so I don't want to waste too much time just hacking away at fodder enemies with huge health bars. So I'm just going to go ahead and summon here. We're going to take out this Black Steel Knights. These guys are very tanky. They like to spam guard counters, do like these big holy slam things. Take him down, get the Black Steel Great Hammer, and we can search this altar here for 2 more Scadutree fragments, and then behind the cave to the northwest. God, I have like no FP on this character. Gonna be a couple enemies in here. Loot that for a Blessing America. That's gonna provide a full heal and also cleanse any status effects. I would save that for an emergency though, because we're really not going to be getting a lot of those. Also, mushrooms right there. That looks like a regular mushroom. You can see it's called white flesh mushroom. So the new stuff in the DLC that we can craft is going to have like its own list of crafting requirements. They're pretty much across the board, I think, unique to the DLC. So definitely get in the habit of running around and picking up any mushrooms and stuff you find, because your base game crafting ingredients probably won't get you too far with the new stuff. Anyways, we'll head over to this tent over here. Clear these guys out. Get some armor there, just like the base game. You can farm these regular enemies for their armor and stuff. Get 2 fire coils there, and then we'll warp back to Scorched Ruins. I'm going to come back for locations like Scorched Ruins here later on for the loot and clear out the enemies and stuff, but right now I'm just focused on upgrades and NPCs. Spots like that church we were just at have like 1 or 2 other items, so I'm just making exceptions for it since it takes like 2 seconds to clear, and there's no other reason to come back to that area later. Now we're going to run this way to the northwest, try to steer clear of this furnace golem for now. They're really not too hard to take down. It's mostly a matter of patience, so we'll just wait until we have the tools to speed it up a bit. They are the main source of all the new Crystal Tear Sphere Wonders Physic though, so they're definitely worth killing at some point. Doesn't seem like he noticed us, but there's a grace right up ahead you can rest at to reset him if he does notice you. So, up ahead you'll find the first of Miquella's crosses and a couple of NPCs. Now the NPCs, and the Scadutree fragment as well, obviously. But the NPCs make kind of a big deal out of these crosses, but they're really mostly just here for story purposes. The central plot of the DLC is pretty much just finding Miquella, and these are the clues, the footsteps he left behind. But finding them all doesn't actually do anything. They do, however, tend to have a Scadutree fragment nearby, and you'll often find NPCs hanging out near them. That being said, I tend to just interact with each one of them once, just in case, which will mark them on your map. It doesn't seem like anyone's questline hinges on you touching all of these, but Sir Ansbach, who we'll meet in just a second, does have a couple bits of extra dialogue after you find certain specific crosses, so like I said, I just interact with them all anyway. It takes 2 seconds to do. But grab the 3-path cross grace right here, and speak to Redmane Freya right next to it. Again, make sure you're exhausting the dialogue of all these NPCs. And she'll tell you to go speak to Hornsent over here, so do that. And he'll give you the cross map, which won't mark the crosses on your map, but you can inspect the map he just gave you to see where to go on your own map. Like I said though, they're not really important, so don't worry about it. It just gives you a general sense of direction for progressing through the DLC if you were going in blind. Next, we'll go through the giant gateway to the west until we reach another cross up the hill somewhere. I kind of don't like that the larval tears only appear at night, because I feel like, especially if you're just following this walkthrough like to the letter, you're going to spend a lot of the time looking at this map at night, which makes it like not as cool looking in my opinion, and it's usually like really foggy and everything at night too. Just kind of makes everything more difficult, but anyway. Activate that grace, grab the Scadutree fragment, touch the cross, and then you can speak to more over here. And you can purchase something, anything, to talk to him more. See what I did there? I'm going to grab these rune arcs, because why not? And then he has a note about sealed spirit springs. They're just like the regular spirit springs in the game. They're in the DLC, but some of them you have to unlock by finding this little like pile of stones nearby. And all this note is really telling you is that those exist. So, yeah, and then once you, like I said, buy something from him, you have the option to talk to more. I think that's it. I don't know why I backed out. Double check. Yeah, that's all he has to say. Not much going on upstairs with that guy. The lights are on, but nobody's home. Then speak to Sir Ansbach here.
They are if you discover certain, I presume just what. If he's certain, I presume just what.
Alright, he's repeating himself, so if you did purchase something for more, you can rest now and speak to Sir Ansbach again, and you'll be able to ask about more.
Oh, you must some more provision, some more his brethren. No doubt these are not.
And he explains that you find friendly kindred of rot scattered around the map that are foraging for supplies, so don't kill them. Instead, you can talk to them or just interact with them to get a whole series of Forager Brood cookbooks, which connects back to Moore's questline. Now, if you do kill one of them and then talk to Moore here, he'll be pretty upset about it, and then the second time you kill one, he'll actually just invade you on the spot, and you will get his armor if you kill him. Obviously, that's going to end his questline since he'll be dead, and I'm going to be showing the whole questline in these videos, but just know that that is an option available to you if you want to get his armor early on, which you might because it's very, very good. But rest again, and you can cash in the fragments we picked up so far to get to Blessing level 3. And then the Revered ones, of course, like I mentioned, get you stronger Spirit Ashes, get to Blessing level 1. But I'd recommend doing that because we have a little tiny bit of fighting to do up here. So up this giant staircase is the entrance to Belurat Tower, which is the first Legacy dungeon we'll do. But for now, we can just run in here and grab a couple items, get the first Grace so we can come back to it easier later. There's going to be a giant scorpion right inside, and then a room full of little baby scorpions, but they should be easy to handle if you turned in your fragments just now. And here come the little ones. Alright, so hop up on the statue, grab a couple more Revered Spirit Ashes. Back in the corner, Shadow Realm Room 1. Also, a couple more Scorpions, 1 second. Forgot to open my map again, show you where we've been. It's where Freya and Hornsent were. There you go, already doing a horrible job at it. Can't say I'm surprised. Up the stairs, another Scorpion here. Guarding a fireproof dried liver. Up the stairs again, we'll have one last Scorpion to deal with. Forgot that one kind of jumps out at you. Grab some black fireflies there, and up the stairs one more time to reach the Grace here. So, like I said, we'll be back for this place next time, and there is one more Scadutree blessing in here. Can level that up twice, actually. Level 3 on both blessings now. Next we'll warp back to Main Gate Cross, right here. And just go down the hill. I'm going to set it to daytime actually, so it's like easier to see. I feel like if I'm having a hard time seeing at all, it's just going to be worse once it hits YouTube. Alright, so yeah, down the hill, and then just before we get through this big cross again, we can turn right. There's going to be some cliffs that we can run along. Couple dogs here, I'm just going to try my best to ignore. Item there, some smithing stone 3s, and then just keep running past all these enemies ahead, and you can get to the next Grace. Go ahead and rest so the bats don't bother us. And then we'll go southwest, just following this path here. And we're going to come up on a graveyard with another one of those glimmering pot guys who drops a Scadutree fragment for us. They're also just more annoying than teardrop scarabs, I feel like, because you have to also loot them afterwards. The loot doesn't just appear in your inventory like with teardrop scarabs, but there's our fragment. Ghost Glovewort 4 nearby, and then go pretty much straight east from there. And straight ahead you can see another one of those headless statues, which means we're getting another Revered Spirit Ash. There we go, and now warp to 3-path cross. We'll mount up and go northeast over to this giant bridge. The Ellac Greatbridge. And there'll be a few random items on here. Just try to dodge the ballista fire up ahead. Ballista bolts, lost ashes of war, and then back here on the right on the edge. I missed it. Shadow Realm Room 1. And then you can just run past that guy. Got a statue here with another Scadutree fragment on it. And just up ahead we got the Castle Front Grace, which we will be coming back to many, many, many times. But rest there and you should be able to hit Blessing level 4 now. And then we'll turn around, go past the statue, and down this path going east. And we'll just stick to the upper path here on the left. Grab the Swift Spear there by the fire on your way by. That guy is so aggressive for no reason. And then take the left fork in the road here. Get the Pillar Path Cross Grace. Scadutree fragments, touch the cross, grab the flowers, and then speak to Tiolier here.
Lady, let us under the tarnish. My name is I too. So here's to new big. Well, I'm as weak as I've always been. I'm afraid. Sorry.
And you can buy something if you want. It's not required like it was for more. I'd recommend the Deadly Poison perfume bottles though, just because I think it's really cool that they actually added these as a weapon type in the DLC. So I'll grab that, and then. Now that we have spoken to Tiolier, you can warp back to Main Gate Cross. And we should have some more dialogue with Moore, so go ahead and speak to him.
Oh, give this. He asked me.
And he gives us the black syrup to give to Tiolier.
For you, things. Goodbye.
So we will go ahead and do that. Warp back to Pillar Path Cross. Speak to Tiolier, give him the black syrup. Ask about the black syrup. And then tell him you're weary of life because a little honesty never hurt anyone. And you should get Tiolier's Concoction, which you'll need for a questline later on, but if you ever lose it, you can buy more from Tiolier for 30,000 runes each. Now, before we get too far with any questlines, I do want to mention something important. There is a point in the DLC where you'll receive a message, or there will be a bunch of like golden particles, kind of look like the Erdtree leaves almost, like floating down from the sky. Raining really is a better way to describe it. And you'll get a message in the middle of your screen saying, somewhere a great rune has been broken, and so too a powerful charm, or something along those lines. That event will advance most of the quest lines and lock you out of some steps and dialogue and all that from these early NPC interactions. I'll go into more detail when we get closer to it, but for those who have already been through the DLC at least once and know what event I'm referring to, I just wanted to throw it out there that you should make sure you're getting all these steps done before that point if possible. That's not something you have to worry about until we get to the next region up here to the northeast yet. And that will probably not be for a few episodes, so. Let's go back down this road, backtracking a little bit to where it forked. And we'll take the other route. Up this hill. Should be an item over here on the right. Brave Glove Ward 6. And just keep going until you find another grace and hear a man yelling. Here we are on the map. And then speak to that man, or at least try to. His name is Egon. Skipping Egon's dialogue feels kind of wrong. I didn't like how that just felt. But yeah, so if you keep going this way down the road and follow Egon's questline, we're gonna get to another like new region that I'm not quite ready to do yet. But before we leave here, let's just rest and pass the time to night, which is of course code for there is a larval tier nearby. And we'll just keep climbing the hill to get to that tower up ahead. And there's going to be a ton of these grave birds around here. Some of them are statues, some of them are not, but there's a lot of them. Grab the grave bird bracelets right there. You are welcome to fight them, but that's it's going to take a minute to cut through all these and get to the tower, so I am good personally. And we'll take this lift up to the top of the suppressing pillar. Got a chest with an ancient dragon smithing stone inside. You can read this message engraved here if you want. Cool lore, we love cool lore. And then go back down. And then behind the tower should be one more grave bird. Can stagger them and get a crit, as you can see. Kind of hard to do unless you sneak up on them though, since they like to fly. And then right below him got some smithing stone 2s, and then we'll go kind of to this field over here to the northeast. And if it is nighttime, you should eventually see the glow of a larval tier. There it is. And then those guys are trying to kill us, so I'll just start making my way back to the grace we just got. And hopefully we can warp away here soon. There we go. Alright, so warp to Castle Front. And we're going to run through just the first little section of this dungeon ahead to get our last Scadutree fragment. You can level up here if you have the runes, or mix a twiggy cracked here in your flask, use a sacrificial twig or whatever you want. Because there's a chance that you die at the end of this run. There's a grace right next to the fragment we're getting, but you're going to have a black steel knight and probably a dog right on top of you as well. That'll prevent you from resting, maybe. I'm going to ignore the items also, just so I don't get confused later, but feel free to grab them in your world. But yeah, just be prepared for a little fight up ahead, or be prepared to die. But we're just going to follow this path up the hill until you see the cross, basically. It's pretty hard to miss. That's the dog, if you couldn't tell. Here's the knight. Nice. Alright, let's try to get this grace, just in case we do die. There we go. Alright, so then grab the Scadutree fragment, touch the cross, and you get the castle cross message, which I can't remember what it says. Yeah. Short version is just keep playing. Alright, so rest up here, and you should be able to get Scadutree Blessing level 5. And with that, we can start our proper Gravesite plane run. I would also like to point out that if you're really struggling in the early DLC still, you can actually circumvent Castle Ensis here to get straight to this next region up here without killing the boss. And in the next region, there are 10 more fragments that are also pretty easy to run around and grab, just like the ones we just got, which would put you at Scadutree Blessing 10 if you also grab the one from this Legacy dungeon over here, which I'll do in the next episode once again. So if you do need the extra help, you can grab all the fragments we just got, then watch the next episode about Belurat Tower Settlement to get the 10th and final fragment from Gravesite Plain here. And then look for my Castle Ensis episode, which should probably be the one right after that. And then the beginning of my Castle Ensis episode, I'll actually show you how to sneak around the castle and immediately make a run for those next 10 fragments, but I won't cover anything else in the next area until we're done grabbing those fragments. So you can then just get those and come right back to this point in the walkthrough to avoid any big spoilers if you need the extra help. Otherwise, I feel plenty comfortable tackling this area at Scadutree Blessing 5, so let's get into it. Okay, so I did actually have a little bit more to talk about before we start actually clearing content, but I already yapped for so long at the beginning of this video, I thought we could at least get a little bit done before I kept going, hence why we got all the fragments. Like I said, I'm going to be using slightly more than just my usual guy with a sword build for the DLC walkthrough, and I encourage you to do the same in the sense that you should bring whatever fun spells and weapons you want into the DLC with you and use whatever playstyle appeals to you the most. Not every build is going to be game-breaking overpowered, but with 200 plus levels to spend, you should be able to put together a viable build with pretty much any playstyle you want. That being said, there are a couple of recommendations I have that could be helpful here, especially if you're new and not super confident in your build that you have going right now. First, I want to talk about Great Runes. I used Godric's Great Rune for my base game walkthrough, like way beyond the point that it stopped being the best option, but now that you have a high-level character, it is most definitely worth considering some other Great Runes if you're always using Godric's. Morgoth's Great Rune is really nice. It gives you a flat plus 25% increase to your HP, which will be a pretty significant amount of extra health if your vigor is close to or even beyond the soft cap of 60. Radahn's Great Rune is also great by similar logic because it will give you a 15% increase to your HP, stamina, and FP. And finally, Rykard's Great Rune is also super nice. It'll heal you by 80 HP plus 7% of your max health every time you kill an enemy. If you're fighting a few big enemies or going into a boss, not super useful honestly, but if you're clearing out lots of smaller enemies and all the random locations around the map, then it's actually really good for keeping your health topped off. It's really great for just general exploration. Honestly, I'll probably be using this for a lot of the walkthrough. But I'm bringing this up because basically all of these Great Runes I just mentioned are way better now than they were earlier in the game because they're percent-based buffs to our base stats, and since our characters are such high level by this point and have much higher base stats, percentage-based increases to your base stats will be way higher than earlier in the game. If you only have 1,000 health and you get 25% more versus if you have 2,000 health to start with and you get 25% more than that, that's going to be a much bigger increase. So bigger base stats, bigger increase now. The other thing I'd recommend is having really any kind of maxed out standard weapon that you can freely change the Ash of War on. It can be absolutely anything, but preferably something simple like a sword that is super flexible with all kinds of Ashes of War. It doesn't have to literally be a sword, but like whips, for example, can't use very many Ashes of War, so they're not a great option. Seeing as bosses are so strong in the DLC though, having a backup weapon that you can either have set to a standard affinity to buff it however you like, or change the Ash of War and affinity to target specific weaknesses is going to be very helpful. If you come across a boss that just has crazy resistance to your main damage type, you're going to have a bad time. So having a flex option that can change into whatever the boss is weak to is fantastic. One example that comes to mind immediately is the number of undead field bosses in the DLC. There's a Deathrite Bird, our favorite, everyone loves a good Deathrite Bird, and several undead dragons that are all super weak to holy damage. So having a weapon in your back pocket that you can throw Sacred Blade on, for example, will be super nice for those situations. In fact, funny enough, the DLC is kind of the opposite of the base game in that regard. For the base game, I would usually say just use whatever you want, but be aware that holy damage will do next to nothing against some of the main bosses. But in the DLC, I would say use whatever you want, but maybe have some holy damage handy because it just absolutely destroys quite a few enemies and bosses. It finally got its time to shine, which is nice to see. NPC fights also super obnoxious in the DLC. They have insane amounts of health, so an Ash of War that can knock them down reliably and just basically CC them constantly is a fantastic thing to have on hand. If you're more into the idea of just sticking to what your build is good at and accepting its weaknesses, then by all means keep playing that way. Honestly, I usually do the same thing. But again, if you're newer to the game, what I'm trying to say here is don't be afraid to diversify your build, have a couple weapons so you can be flexible in different situations, and just generally use all of the tools you have at your disposal. Early game, you kind of have to commit to something, but endgame Elden Ring is just a totally different game, plays completely differently. So by this point, you have enough levels, weapons, and talismans at your disposal to have a handful of viable options without having to completely respec your character. With all that said, let's get started, and we'll go over to Cliff Road Terminus and start with Prospect Town over here. And we will set the time to night because there's a larval tier right after this. I think it's nighttime already. So head straight for the ruins, and then before we climb up there, there's a little path down to the right here. Got this blood fiend here, guarding a couple of these sanguine amaryllises, I don't know. Kind of hard to see at night, but if you look straight up at the cliff face, there's a pot hanging from a rope. You can shoot it down, or you can actually use Margit's or Mohg's shackle, and that will knock it down. You can get the String Seller's Bell Bearing. I guess if you didn't watch my base game walkthrough, I'll elaborate on what I just did a bit more. Essentially, Margit's or Mohg's shackle, when you use it in their boss fight, it sends out a huge invisible shockwave in all directions, that when it hits them, they get stunned and rooted in place for a few seconds. That's the intended use for these. But even though we can't see that shockwave, it can actually interact with some things in the game, and it's massive. These hanging pots are one example. They can also be used to hit the flamethrower pillars inside catacombs from long range, so you don't have to bother dodging the fire while you close the distance to them. And another use in the DLC, which we'll see soon enough, is actually unlocking those sealed spirit springs, since they just require you to break a little pile of rocks, which can be broken with the shackle. Let's climb up here. Should really get someone other than Latenna. She's not super optimal for this right now. We'll take out these blood fiends. Check the second building on the left for some beast blood. Do I have anything else upgraded? Probably not, since this is the walkthrough character and I really only ever summon Latenna. Alright, well, I'll fix that later. Next episode, we'll see. We go upstairs, and there should be an item right here. White flesh mushrooms, keep climbing. It's gonna take her an eternity to climb up here, and she's just not gonna make it in the end either. Hold on. I legitimately like just don't summon very often, so this is something I actually don't know. If you send her home, can you resummon? I don't know if you can summon up here at all. Maybe you can't. I don't know. Oh well. So, yeah, there's a bunch of these guys right here. There's a Stake of America right there, though, so don't stress too much about this fight. Should be able to pull them back here and take them on 2 packs of 3. Looks like I did that successfully. I ran out of FP. Tragic. I have to start leveling up the old brain. Get some more FP. Alright, settle down, bud. So the first time you clear these guys out, you should get Blood Fiend's Arm, guaranteed. Get some Sanguine Amaryllis there, and then to the north, down some stairs. Got one more item here, Somber Smithing Stone 4, and then you can climb up. And crack open the chest to get the Outer God Heirloom Talisman, which is the +5 arcane levels talisman that was strangely missing from the base game. But we have it now. And then just make your way back down to the front of this place. We'll wrap around the side here to the right. And there should be more of those flowers here, a couple of them. Climb up here, still see the moon, so we should be good. Larval Tear, and the first of those Kindred of Rot that I mentioned earlier. So you get the Forge of Brood Cookbook 2 and some Black Pyre Flies for interacting with him. And then run over here to the northeast and just look over the cliff here. That's where we're at on the map. And then we got a dog and a couple blood fiends. I'm just gonna heal up here to be safe. And they were guarding some great arrows and some smithing stone 4s, and then you can mount up, head into these woods over here. There's going to be a couple of these like giant golden rams. And ignore the first one, and near the second one, find the Greater Potentate's Cookbook 3. And then just keep going and climb up these rocks as high as you can go. You should find an artist's shack over here, which has the Incursion painting. And then below here, if you circle around, like climb back down and sort of make a big loop around that peak over there, there's a little cave to get down here, like the safe way. But there's one of those really annoying enemies I pointed out earlier in that cave, so I prefer to just jump down here. Grab the Blessed Blue Dew Talisman. And out the front door to get the Oathseeker Knight armor set and the Pada weapon, and then you should be able to find the spot to drop down safely. And here we are, right where we enter the DLC, which means up here we should find the Gravesite Plain Grace. And you can rest, and for this one I would actually recommend setting the time to day, because limited visibility is not going to be the move for this next part. So we got an NPC fight coming up here. From this grace, go southeast into the woods, and if you check the map, we're like looking kind of like basically straight in the middle of these woods, below the middle of the bend in the road, somewhere around here. There's going to be an NPC roaming around, who is like the actual literal Wolverine. I don't like that sound. That's what we're looking for. So once you get kind of close to that beacon I just dropped, crouch and approach kind of slowly. There's wildlife. Oh, he's right there. Nice. There's wildlife everywhere, so it's hard to like just find him by hitting lock on. But sneak up on him and try to get a backstab, because he is super aggressive, has a ton of health, builds up bleed quickly, whole 9 yards. Pretty sure he can heal once like anyone else. Yes. But I'd prefer if he didn't do that. Nice. That went well. So kill him for not a Ratafruit, but the Beast Claw weapon. And yeah, that's about it for that. I wish, or it would have been cool, I guess, if he had some kind of like self-heal to solidify the Wolverine reference, but there's enough of a problem without that, I suppose. Like I said, that fight went really well. It can go a lot worse, trust me. I mean, I've seen it go worse for someone else. Not me, obviously, but, you know. We're back to Gravesite Plain, and this time we'll go the opposite direction. Just follow these cliffs to the left, and we will eventually find a little small mausoleum. And you're pretty much going to have to fight this next enemy the opposite of however you fought that guy, unless you have an Ash of War that just knocks people down constantly. That might still work. But I got away with that really kind of... It went really smoothly because I was able to just keep him staggered because he was wearing nothing but a loincloth. This guy has a ton of poise though, so... pretty much spamming an Ash of War like Lion's Claw or Giant's Hunt or something that can keep him staggered is going to be your best bet if you can. Otherwise, slow and steady wins the race here. In melee range, he just has a great sword. It's nothing fancy, but he has a lot of poise, so he'll usually win if you try to trade normal attacks. He kind of also likes to spam jumping heavies for me as well, which is kind of annoying. Just be aware of that. And if you back up to heal, he has 2 ranged attacks to watch out for. His crossbow, which you'll see him load before he starts a rapid fire volley. You just avoid it by running to the side. You're really only going to be in trouble if you get stuck in like a healing animation. And then he can also send out a wind projectile with his sword, which he can combo into a lunging spin move that gets him right back into melee range. So be ready for those if you try to back up for healing. And he can heal once too. There's that combo. Timing on that's like slightly tricky because the projectile actually doesn't move that fast, honestly. At least slower than you'd expect it to, I feel like. Got a free heal off there because he took out his crossbow for some reason. So I knew he couldn't swing at me. Just an absolute tank. Here's this. Just run to the side. Pretty easy to dodge. Yeah, that first wind projectile can also like stagger you quite a bit and almost guarantee that follow-up spin as you saw there, so very dangerous. But you get the Great Sword of Solitude and the Solitude armor set, which I really like. I like both of those things a lot. I wish the armor set was like slightly slimmer. It looks really cool on like a strength build, but it has a really nice cape to it, and I just like the general aesthetic of it, but it's like a little too chunky, I feel like, for, you know, like the dual katanas I'm running right now, you know? But warp to Scorched Ruins. And we will clear this place out now. Took a second to load everything in there, that was kind of weird. But run down the path to the south. And we'll hop up onto this ledge to the left. I think we're being chased by a dog. Grab a hefty cracked pot. Those work exactly like cracked pots from the regular game. They're just bigger, do more damage, all that fun stuff. Greater Potentate's Cookbook 1, and then cross the streets. Go inside here, smash the pots to get Shadow Realm Rune 2. And quickly hop up here so we can deal with these rock throwers. Couple of delinquents. Hop up here maybe. There we go. Furrow Calling Finger Remedy. All that effort for something I'll never use. And then up here we can cross this cloth covered bridge. Open the chest for the Blade of Mercy talisman, and then turn around to the south. Drop down for some butterflies. Jump across, get another item here, some red flesh mushrooms, and then you can jump down again if you want. There's another enemy or two here, but you can get some more butterflies as well. There we go. Now then, we'll go kind of over here from the Scorched Ruins. Wait, where am I at? Yeah, no, that's right. So yeah, from the Scorched Ruins Grace right there, we'll go northeast. It's a lower section instead of up to that graveyard from earlier where we got the fragments. And along here, you're going to find a cave entrance. Get the Sacred Tower painting, which we really will not be able to get the reward from until almost the very end of the DLC, unfortunately, but is what it is. Go northwest from there, stop at this first structure to get the backhand blade, a new weapon class in the DLC. It's called backhand blade, but they're a whole category of weapons called backhand blades. Really fun weapon, very cool Ash of War. Grab a Glovewort 3 from the next structure, and then we're just going to keep running this way past the Greatbridge. And if you look down to the right, just wait for a nice, safe opportunity to drop down. That should work. And then we can turn around to find the rundown Traveler's Rest. Inside we'll get a Furnace Visage, 2 of them, and the Greater Potentate's Cookbook 2, which I'm sure I'll mention this in a future episode, but that one, whoops, does allow you to craft hefty furnace pots, which are the item I was sort of alluding to that's going to really significantly speed up the speed at which you can kill the furnace golems. You need hefty cracked pots, obviously. You really only end up using 1 furnace pot per golem, so we actually would be good here. You need furnace visitors to craft them, which are kind of rare. But you do get 1 to drop from every golem, so if you only use 1 pot to kill it, you get refunded basically. And then we also need Embers of Mesmer, which I don't believe we've gotten yet. I think they can drop from the flaming dogs around here, or maybe the Mesmer soldiers, one of the two. I've definitely gotten them, but mostly you're going to find them all over the place in Shadow Altus up here in this region, so we'll just save that for another time, come back for this furnace golem here later on. Oh yeah, I guess also while I'm at it, the new inventory thing. So you can add this new tab here called Recent Items, and also no matter what tab you're in, you'll see this little golden exclamation point over the new items. So you actually know what you picked up recently, and then this tab just shows you in the order you picked it up. So really nice since you have so many items by this point in the game. And you have to enable that in your settings. Yeah, this one. The display tab, show recent items, turn that on, mark new items. You can toggle that on or off, but recommend throwing that on. I think it's kind of nice at least. But go northwest from there, and you'll find a Grace. This is the abandoned Ailing village, the Greatbridge North Grace. And then actually set the time to night because you guessed it, larval tier. Should see the glow immediately off to your right, so run down and grab that. So we've already gotten, in just this one episode, what, 3 opportunities to respec your character now, so if you're not feeling what you got going on for this DLC, switch it up, try out the new stuff. On this altar we got a Revered Spirit Ash, and these things are called manflies. They're very easy to fight except for one just really annoying long animation grab attack. I'm just gonna ignore them right now though. Climb up here. Ailment Talisman, I thought my life was over just then. And then go over to the west cliff over here, and then follow it south back towards these buildings until you can drop down. Some fly mold, and then jump into this building here for the Greater Potentate's Cookbook 10. The first building over there near the Grace has a broken rune in it, which I'm just gonna ignore because it's worth all of 500 runes, but it's there if you want it. Let me kill these guys so I can open my map though. Why am I still in combat? Somebody just died. Alright, well, like I said, first building nearest the Grace. And up ahead, you got a couple of dogs. chowing down some white flesh mushrooms. There we go, now I can open it. So there's the village, we hop down there and just keep following this ridge over here around the lake until you see some gravebird statues and some actual gravebirds too, actually. Got 3 of them to deal with here. Alright, well, we'll just ignore them then, since they don't want to fight. Get the Gravebird armor. Oh, now you're upset. That's fine, we're out of here. Just run south from here, following these cliffs on the right, and we should see a cave entrance down here. And this is the Belurat Gaol, which the map is going to show as like the entrance is inside this whole settlement, which it obviously, I mean, I'm deep in the tunnel now, but even on the outside, I think the cave entrance is like right here on the map or something. It looks like it's inside this place, but it's not. So grab that grace, and then I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I actually just straight up hate all of these places in the DLC. There's like a handful of these jails that just have this like frozen cave aesthetic, which was cool for 2 seconds, but I honestly just despise clearing them. So let's make this quick. Watch out for an ambush here on the left. Okay, cool. Just make an impossible turn. Go inside here. There's not an enemy there. I'm imagining things. There's got some frozen maggots on that corpse, and then you can find them all over the place. They just look like these little frozen clusters on the ground. So we can go down these stairs here, and the floor will collapse. We'll just take out these enemies here. See what I mean about the runes in the DLC though? Like, these guys are almost worth 1,000 each, and they're just like free kills. I bumped my massive gallon jug of water. You might have heard the ice. Sorry to break the Elden Ring immersion. Silver horn tender in there, and then we'll come back out here and cross this bridge. Frozen maggots. More on the ledge there and in through here, and then we're gonna hop through this window to the right. There's not an item in here, right? I feel like frozen maggot, I guess, but yeah, jump through here and we will clear this room. This one as well, free runes. Broken rune, and then check out here to the right for some Thawfrost boluses, and then through the gate over here, and you can talk to this phantom guy here if you want. None of those guys are ever required for questlines, just like random world building lore kind of stuff, so talk to them if you want whenever you see them. Does no harm. We'll enter this room to get a Shadow Realm Rune 3, and then this new enemy type, which I'm not a big fan of at all. I can't, like... Slash damage seems to do pretty well against them, but other than that, I can't really find any, like, glaring weaknesses to them. I wish they had something that you could just, like, you know, throw a fire pot at them or something and it would, like, basically one-shot them. That would be very nice, but... If you don't have slash damage, they just have like a lot of health and kind of annoying to fight if you ask me, but not much you can do. So yeah, once he's dead, you can start dropping down these. And I like to roll. Be careful if you like jump or if you roll, I guess, because the chains have like, seems like kind of large hitboxes. So if you don't aim your jump right, you can like bounce off of them and slide off, which kind of sucks. Once you get to the glass shard one, turn around because we want to go to this wooden platform down here. See, like that? Oh, I didn't like that. Almost pushed me off. Alright, and then jump down to the right and take out these small jars here first. Because that jar straight ahead next to the chest has another one of those jar innard guys that we just saw for the first time in it. And when we get close, he's going to pop out of it and do a grab attack, which for some insane reason likes to pull you off of this platform, and there's no way to get back up unless you start from the beginning of the dungeon again. So you can try your luck with rushing the chest and dodging with iframes, but I'd recommend just like doing that, getting away from it, and then you can take him out. Get a hefty cracked pot there, so you definitely don't want to miss that chest. But yeah, when he grabs you, he just like backsteps and pulls you off. It doesn't even seem like it's supposed to work that way, or maybe it does seem like it's supposed to work that way, because obviously whatever design choice is going to invoke the most rage in the player is what FromSoft is going with. But it looks weird. Falls in a weird way, and I don't like it. Clear out the rest of this room. This is so nice, actually. I was like running through here with a spear last time I was playing through the DLC, and these guys are just like, oh, that's cute. I don't care though. Dual katanas has to be the way to go for those. So there's going to be a few more on this bridge. Just run past them because it's going to collapse up ahead. I mean, you can fight them if you want, but those stairs will break. And then this, if you check like every last corner of this room we're in right now, there's random like frozen maggots, as you can see, but this place is an absolute labyrinth, so I'm just gonna like focus on the important items, you could say. So first, from where you drop, let's follow the path to the right. And you should get to a corner with a lost Ash of War, and then turn right around and go through the path southwest. Follow this one along. Take these guys out and keep going southeast now until you see this open gate. Off to the left, we've got some smithing stone 6s, and off to the right, we've got some jars we can climb. So that's the way forward. We'll come back to that later. Just keep it in mind. So climb these jars, and then go left. Wait, hold on. There's a few times I looked ahead in my notes. There's a few times there are these toppled jars, so I think I read the wrong one just now. Yeah, okay, I was right. Take this guy out now. So yeah, go left. So you get to the wall over here, and then on the right somewhere you should find another spot that you can hop up. Got a couple items here, some innard meats, and then jump across to get a hefty cracked pot, and then you can go west from here. Right here in this corner we got the Greater Potentate's Cookbook 11, then hop up here and go to the right. And keep following this path until we can climb up to the right again. Hefty cracked pot, and that corpse right there that doesn't have an item on it anymore is the Lost Ashes of War from the beginning of this room, which means we hop down here and take this guy out. Oh no. Some of them are like bigger too. That's just like makes it even worse somehow. So left path is the way back to the beginning. Right path will take us back to that gate, which is the way out of here. So let's go that way. And this room, if you check to the left, there are a couple of small jars. And to the right, we got a big one. There we go, take him out, and he was guarding some smithing stone 3s. Kill that guy. Now there's several enemies up ahead that are going to pop out. This jar right ahead of us that you can't lock onto is also an enemy, so get close and try to get him to grab you. And then once that's baited out, just hop across. Try to take these guys out as fast as possible, because you're going to have several to deal with here. I like to just jump across, actually, because sometimes they'll miss the jump, which is really funny. Kind of went a little early there. Or they'll both jump like that, and sometimes one will get stuck on the other. Unfortunately, no one fell into the abyss this time. Alright, so jump across now. And that pot, if you're like really bad on healing right now and you just want to try to get to the boss, it's right down there. But there's one last thing we can do. Off the edge over here to this pot. This will be an elevator that takes us up. And you can jump on here. Jump on the platform. This glowing thing here is a button to bring the jar back when we need it in a second, so keep that in mind. And then we can hop over here. Got another one of these guys to deal with. And a big jar down there too, but you can just ignore him, honestly. Hop up here, get the great jar helmets. And this is right where, that's that bridge we crossed where the stairs collapsed afterwards, but once you get the jar, backtrack to the jar elevator sentence and hop up here. I think, I feel like it's safest to just time it and drop onto it like that, but I'm pretty sure if you wait for it to get to the top here, it'll automatically go back down to match the height. Yeah, so that's another option if you're a little scared. And then same thing here, you could jump off early, or you could wait for it to come up probably, I don't know. Whatever works for you. And then hop onto this one, which I just remembered doesn't move. I guess I'll do this myself. Jump down here, and it is time for the boss. So this is Demi-Human Swordmaster Owns? I don't know. Owns is kind of funny to me. But this is literally just Yoda. We had Wolverine, now we have Yoda. He even has like a straight up like force ability with his grab. It's wild. He's an absolute menace. Super weak to fire damage though, so try that if you're having a hard time. But let's get in here and fight him. Starting off a little aggressive, are we? Bro just parried me. Alright. We both went for the Blade Flurry and he just did a cooler, better one. That was like the most anime Elden Ring fight I've ever had, I feel like. Just 1,000 swings. But you get the Demi-Human Swordsman Yosh Spirit Ashes, and just, you know, tell me that name doesn't confirm the Yoda theory. But return to the entrance when you're done. Why did I say that weird? When you're done. And then directly outside, if you face southeast, those rocks ahead, trees on them, find the spot for the Incursion painting, which doesn't look as impressive at nighttime. Kind of like what I was saying earlier, like, it's a beautiful painting. I guess it's darker than I remember. Never mind. Yeah, forget I said anything. For some reason I remembered it having like beams of sunlight coming through it, but not that one. Grab the Shadow Realm Rune 1 there, and then warp over to Greatbridge North. I think we're good here. So, it is time to take out the Ghostflame Dragon. These guys are like 80% identical to any other dragon we fought before. The main difference is the Ghostflame and the fact that it is undead. Ghostflame will do frostbite damage just like any Deathrite bird, so be careful about that. But since it's undead, holy damage of any kind is going to be super effective, and anything that specifically said this is more effective against those who live in death will absolutely maul these things. The Gold Epitaph weapon, it's a straight sword. Actually, I'm not even spec'd right now to follow my own advice here, so hold on, Here we go. Golden Epitaph, it's a straight sword, unique skill, Last Rites, gives the Sacred Order effect to yourself and allies in the vicinity, particularly effective at laying the rest of those who live in death. So this is basically just going to make us better at fighting undead things for a second, and then you can combine that with your standard weapon. I recommended that you can always swap the Ash of War on. So I, of course, have the Lightning Infusion on my katana because it scales with dexterity, but for this fight, I can swap that to Sacred and the, what's it called? Or Sacred Blade. I could honestly keep the Lightning Affinity, actually, since it's the same wet blade. But, yeah, do that, and I will also need to mix the Faith tier into my Wondrous Physics, since I have basically no faith on this character. There we go. But, what was I saying? Golden Epitaph gives you that huge boost to holy damage. Combine that with a weapon that has the Sacred Blade Ash of War, and then undead enemies already take extra damage from that stuff before any buffs to yourself, so you can stack all that together to really just shred through this thing's health bar. You could also craft up some throwing pots that deal holy damage as well if you wanted to. But as far as new moves, its Wing Slam will come in pairs, so it'll slam both wings down one after the other and covers a lot more forward distance than we're used to with most dragons. When it flies up and does the thing where it like beats its wings a couple times before like landing straight on top of you, it's only going to flap its wings twice instead of 3 times, which is slightly different. And then it can also let out waves, it will let out waves of Ghostflame whenever it stomps its attack, kind of like Exikes in the base game, where it had those like clouds of Scarlet Rot every time it stomped its leg, or stomped its foot. So if you're used to fighting these things around their legs, I'd recommend trying a different approach and just going for the head or the wings. And lastly, when it just stands still and roars and you see its ribcage filling with Ghostflame, get far away because it will release a huge AoE fire attack that hits very hard. But if you go with the Sacred Blade approach or something similar, you probably won't have to deal with most of that because you're going to tear this thing apart. So let's drink my Faith boost, Last Rites, and let's get to it. And try to aim these Sacred Blades at its head, because you'll do way more damage that way. Grab the Great Katana there, one of the new weapon types. Insane damage. And it's just dead. Easy as that. And that's with like no faith basically too on this character. I'm going to add faith, but you get Dragonheart and Somber Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone. Remember in the beginning of the episode when I told you I was like level 200? That was because I planned on grinding for some runes before I started the DLC, and I'm going to do that between now and next episode, because all that stuff I said about just being guy with a sword, I was planning on adding more things to my build. But right now I actually kind of still am just guy with the sword, so yeah, we'll fix that. But anyways, from the center of the lake, let's go southeast. Played through the DLC a few times all the way to, you know, write this walkthrough and prep myself for everything, and I was like, yeah, I like the freedom and flexibility I have with my build at level 200, so let me do that. And then I didn't level up the character I was actually going to record the walkthrough on yet. But you get the Ash of War Savage Lion's Claw right there, which is like regular Lion's Claw, except you can chain it into a couple of flips instead of just the one big one. But then warp to Castle Front. And we'll go down this main path and check the second cluster of tents over here. Oh, we got Latenna again. Still haven't gone back to make a new one, or level up a new Ash. Whoops. Thought I had Waterfowl Dance. There we go, let's switch these. That's not the right button. There we go, don't need that anymore. And then, did I loot the tent? I did not. Losing my mind right now. Fire Knight's Cookbook too, and then you can cross the road over here to the southeast. And there will be a bunch of perfumers here. Dude saw Waterfowl Dance coming and just booked it in the other direction. Very relatable. Alright, you can open this chest here for the Fire Spark perfume bottle. And then, if you go east from this camp, look over the ledge, there's a spot you can drop down a few times to just get all the way to the bottom here. These guys hit really hard after they buff themselves, start glowing red. Get the spread crossbow there. Right around the corner, some smithing stone 5s. This is where we are in relation to the Grace, the bottom of this cliff here. And then straight ahead, you probably could see if it wasn't foggy and rainy, but there's some ruins, so we'll make our way over there. Feel free to just ignore all the enemies fighting here. And we reach the Ruined Forge lava intake. The Grace rest. And on down the stairs. To the left, you can drop down this ladder. You got this message, it's going to be in all of these. It says hit them where they're weakest, which is like honestly insulting to me. I feel like this is just the most obvious thing to try after you realize that you're not doing any damage to their front, is they have this exposed red crystal behind them. But yeah, obviously just hit them in the red crystal. It's going to do more damage, and it's going to stagger them pretty quickly. I will say, though, there is a bug with these guys that I haven't seen addressed very many places, and I haven't seen in the patch notes. And as of the time I'm recording this, I don't believe it's been fixed. But if you have a weapon that like does pierce damage and the backstab animation hits twice, like you know, some weapons when you backstab, you like hit them for a little bit of the damage and then go back in for like the main part of the crit. These guys are bugged for some reason, it seems like, with pierce weapons, where you do like the little like 400 damage or something with like the initial hit, And then when you like do the big like whole backstab animation where you'd normally hit like over 1,000, the real big damage dealer, it doesn't do any damage on the second part. So if that's the case for you, hopefully you have a weapon that you can swap to. Like I was mostly using a spear in my last playthrough, like I mentioned, and I just had a battle axe I would swap to specifically for fighting these guys, so I could actually like do damage on the backstab. Because if you don't do that big backstab damage, then they have a ton of health, and you can only hit them every so often because you have to hit that weak spot in the back, basically. So yeah, if you have like no way to reliably get that crit on them, then I would just probably run by them in most cases, honestly. They won't follow you for very far, and they're very slow. But run in here. I hope I didn't miss any smithing stones on the ground in that first room while I was distracted talking, but obviously run around and grab smithing stones on the ground wherever you see them, which is what we're going to do first in this room. Just basically run around and grab everything you see on the ground here. Somber smithing stone 2 there. All these ones in front of him. Another one over here. Another one, some of these gas stones for crafting. Smithing stone, smithing stone. This guy's guarding a corpse with another one. And we're good for this room, I think. See how slow these guys are? Like, you really don't have to fight them in most cases. They're more or less one-on-one, though, I will. Take out this lava slime. This guy I'll just take out. So I also don't want to be cornered if I go over there, but like the other ones aren't even catching up to us, as you can see. There we go, and you can loot the Smith Script Dagger. And that looks like all the smithing stones and stuff, so let's go back to that last room. We'll climb up these stairs. Greater Potentates Cookbook 13. This way. This little jump here. Got some smithing stone 7s. Smithing stone 1. And then hop across here to get to a smithing stone 4, a couple of them. And then drop down and just run that same route again to get back up to where we just were. This time we'll turn right and go down this ladder. I bumped my water jug again, I'm sorry if the mic picks that up. Smithing stone, glass shard, and pull the lever to bring down this giant pipe thing. And we will jump on top of this once we can. You don't actually have to make that big jump. You can go down the ladder, and then the lava does, like, not a lot of damage. So, just casually hop up here if you need to. But we will run all the way to the top of this, take out the slimes along the way. Ow. Hello? There we go. Jump over to the right. And interact with the Forge Altar to get the Anvil Hammer and an Ancient Dragon Smithing Stone. And there are a few of these forges in the DLC, and that's how they all work. There's no boss fight. You're just looking around for a path to get to the altar at the end, and you interact with it for a reward. The reward for this one, the Anvil Hammer, it's really cool. I think it has a skill where you slam the ground and a bunch of spears pop up to impale the enemy. It's pretty sick. Also, on the note of these forges, we got something called the Smith Script Dagger. This guy. There are a series of Smith Script weapons in the DLC. There's the dagger, of course. There's the Cirque, which is a backhand blade, one of those new weapon types. There's a spear, a great hammer, an axe, and a shield. And they all have the ability to be thrown, and then the weapon will just reappear in your hand instantly after throwing it. So with all those different weapon types, you can now incorporate throwing attacks into lots of different melee playstyles, which is really cool. I'm a big fan of those, and there's like talismans we'll find that enhance them as well. But anyway, that's about it for Gravesite Plain, aside from the pathways that will lead us into other regions, but I'm just gonna save those for the episodes that we actually go to the next zones, because I feel like it would be less confusing to start an episode showing how to actually get to the new zone, rather than just starting there with no context for how we got there. There is one other thing that's sort of part of Gravesite Plains, I guess, which is Fog Rift Catacombs, right up here in this area, next to Castle Ensis, but I'm going to come back to that in a couple episodes, because it's kind of a pain in my opinion, and it's far enough north that I can rationalize putting it in the Shadow Altus section. But next time we'll come over here and do Belurat Tower Settlement, the first Legacy dungeon, so I will see you next time for that.